First things first, let's get the wheel nuts just cracked off, and then let's get the car lifted up and let's take a look and see what we can find. Remember, car jacked up, so we've got it on the jack. I've also put an axle stand underneath, keeping us all safe before we whiz the rest of the wheel nuts off. Let's see what's up with this brake. Okay, so handbrake is off, so the pads should be free. So to me, I think we've got a sticky caliper or a caliper traveller that's getting stuck, because that's not budging. Handbrake is off, brakes are off obviously, so that's not good. So I think first thing we'll do is we'll try and get a little bit of a gap. So we'll prise a bit of a gap and then make sure that the hub itself spins freely whilst the brakes are definitely released. So the tough part here is, what you'd normally do is you'd normally use a gap at the back here between the pad and the disc to get a little bit of leverage, which slowly you can get a bit of space to get things out. Now the thing is, these are touching on the wheel, the pads, so there's no movement at all. And also, if I remember rightly, these are wind back, so it's not that easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try pumping the brakes just to see if I can get it eased up enough to get a bit of a gap, and then we can see what's going on. That's not going to plan, so next option is the two bolts on the back of the carrier. Might be able to undo those, get a little bit of movement. Okay, that's one of them. The top one is tricky because you've got the brake line in the way, so I don't think the socket's going to fit. Well, I'm not quite sure how much of this video is going to be usable because I think the camera's been set in a strange mode, but nevertheless. So what I've now done is, you can see I've now spun the carrier around so I can take a look at the pads moving or not, as the case may be. You can see those aren't budging on the runners, and they are far too tight. I would expect a little bit of movement, and there is next to nothing. And looking, there's a lot of build up around here, so hopefully this is our problem. If these aren't moving freely, that's going to cause us all sorts of problems. It's also, I'm going to need to wind back the caliper to refit it, and I don't think I've got a caliper rewind tool. Just looking, the boot looks okay, there doesn't look any other damage, so I think a general cleanup. Now ideally I'd like to get this runner and carrier removed, and we'll figure it from there. Here we go, here's the carrier, and yeah, it's got the anti-squeal that does help them stick, but at the same time the pads aren't shifting at all. So what I'm going to do is get the pads off, try and put it so you can see it, get the pads off the carrier and then give the ends a bit of a clean up, because these gather bits of dust and dirt and rubbish, because there's still a lot of meat left on these pads. They're not in bad nick, so I think clean the carriers up so that it all moves freely is certainly going to make a huge difference. So what I've done is I've wire brushed the pads, cleaned up the carriers as well, and the metal clips. I've also used a little touch of copper grease just on the runners, just a tiny amount. You don't need to use much. Now I know that that's sometimes a bit controversial, but I've always used it, always found it a good thing to do, and the pads are actually moving. Still not that freely, but that's the idea of the metal piece. But they are moving now, as opposed to what they were. So now what we'll do is we'll clean up the rest of the caliper, and we'll get this back on and see if this helps out, stops it sticking. Could well be the caliper though, that's the problem. All of this might not be any use if it's the caliper itself not rewinding properly, and in which case probably going to need to replace the caliper, but that might be another job. We can give this one a go and see how we get on with it. Okay, I put the carrier on, fastened that on first, that was the easiest, and then put the caliper itself over, and it actually fitted not too bad. So I think the movement that I've got on the pads might be a winner. And if you think, I didn't really retract it at all. These ones you have to turn clockwise to wind them back in. I don't actually have the proper wind tool, but you can see the wheels moving freely. So what I'm going to do is go and pull the handbrake on, which should lock it, then take it off again and see if it frees up. So here we go. So spinning. Let's go and put the handbrake on. Okay, handbrake on. So this is a good check to make sure that we haven't caused a problem. Nope, wheels nice and locked solid, just what we want. Now let's release the handbrake, and hopefully, yes, it's released the wheel, so it's spinning. Now of course, this doesn't exactly confirm that we're okay. Once we use the hydraulic brakes, we'll see whether there's a sticking problem there. So test that out, and then I think put the wheel back on, and fingers crossed we've solved this issue and we can move on to the next.